When did I tell y'all about having cops at my door? At least it's only 3 stars. We could probably talk our way out of this. In the meantime, I know this ain't Power World, but get him, Sumo Buddy. Hey guys, welcome back to the After Hours. I'm the A-Tail Beast, and today we'll talk about short selling. Now, one of the things you have to understand about short selling is short selling requires a margin account. When we talk about a margin account, you have to break it down into how much cash do you have in that account. But that cash in that account is not all you can use for your trade position. You actually use your buying power. When we look at buying power actually comes to how much margin do you have? Is it times 2? Times 4 or times 6 for a lot of international accounts. And with more money that you borrowed, you have to have an even tighter risk management strategy, because if you use 100% of your cash position, that's just your money, and you can max lose 100% of your investment. But if you are shorting, you minimum need a margin account because you're going past that 100%. And when we go over the edge, when it comes to shorting, you can lose infinite amount of your money, which means you're going to have to borrow some money from your broker. Now we're talking about how large of a drawdown can you see and still stay in the position. There was a quote that said from Warren Buffett, you need to be able to see a drawdown of 50% before you make money. Now, when I say a drawdown, I'm not talking about you actually losing 50% of your account and doing that every time. That's crazy. But if you see an opportunity and you are in the negative, but you didn't actualize your stock, you should be able to see it go the opposite direction, up to 50%. Now, that's mostly for swing trading. When we talk about swing trading, we have to go over all kinds of stuff like overnight fees, swinging, interest, hard to borrow, easy to borrow. There's so many things. And that's mostly for large cap stocks. You can do the same thing with penny stocks, but the interest fees usually become sky high. Things become hard to borrow. With all those things, that's complicated in itself. But if we're talking about short selling, and only short selling, you're gonna have to have some type of risk tolerance. And the reason you need that risk tolerance is because you're gonna have a margin account. With that margin account, once you go past 100% of your position, you're going to be in the negative, because when you short, the ceiling for the stock price is infinite and the floor is 0. If you are buying, that means you have infinite profit potential. And when you lose, the lowest it can go is 0. Which means you lose 100% of your position. But it's the exact opposite in shorting. You can have infinite risk, but if it goes to 0, you can only make up to 100%. But if a company goes bankrupt, who actually pays you? So when you borrow from your broker, they're going to have 2 individual blocks. Now these blocks are hard to borrow and easy to borrow. They represent individual stocks. If we're talking about a blue chip, which is a large cap company, they may be easy to short, which means there's plenty of borrows to go around. And that's because the inventory is huge. But if you borrow a stock that's hard to borrow, it might come with interest fees. Because if we're talking about bad fundamental companies like penny stocks, we know the only correct direction is down. So a lot of people are going to borrow. If you want to borrow it, there's probably another 100,000, even 1 million people out there that have the same idea as you. But not everyone's going to do it because they don't get up early enough. They don't have the right connection and tools, or there might even be a lack of inventory through your broker, and they get forced out of a locate, or even forced out of their position altogether. Now, the concept is actually easy to understand. If you entered a position, you borrowed shares at that current stock price. And if that stock price decreases, you have to buy back at a lower position. And now you just made money. When you buy back those stocks, that negative actually becomes your positive. The person that holds that risk goes to your broker. Let's do an example. If you borrow shares at $5 and then this stock was bought out at $20, you just lost $15 per share. Now, if you lost $15 per share and you were in a short position, that means you lost triple of what your initial short position was. Because when you went from 5 to 10, that was losing 100% of your position. And you went from 5 to 15, that was you losing 200%. Going 5 to 20, that's you losing 300% of your initial position. Remember, you can lose infinitely when it comes to short selling. There's a lot of people that try to keep that from happening, especially through your broker. Now, they don't want you to blow up, because when you blow up, that takes away from their consistent income coming in. So your broker loves to give you sticker shock, especially with hard to borrow stocks that are usually micro floats or even a nano float. There may be a supernova or something with a lot of range, and you're like, that's what I want to trade today. Well, you have to get past that sticker shock. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but you being able to make money on it gets a lot harder when it comes to these fees. The fees are never your friend, especially when they're hard to borrow.
Interested in trading like Steven Ducks? It all starts with choosing the right broker. Ducks Trading has partnered with Centerpoint Securities to supercharge your trading journey. By joining Centerpoint Securities through Ducks Trading, you can unlock CP Edge, a suite of top-tier trading tools valued at over $6,000 right at your fingertips. Gain an edge in your trading with real-time scanners, cutting-edge news, and a personalized trading journal. Experience trading like never before, with superior short inventory, dedicated support, buttery smooth trade execution, and the opportunity to earn interest on any of your idle funds. Plus, enjoy competitive pricing that suits your trading style. Ready to elevate your trading? Simply click the link in the description below to get started. Now, let's dive back into the content.
Now, if you have a position that you know is going to last a few days, you might want to pay attention to how much those fees are, as well as the T+2 rule. That means your money in your account won't be settled until 2 trading days. And when it does, there might be a lot of margin calls, or someone might force you out of your trade. And in that whole process, first thing you have to do is break even from the fees. And that's the fee times whatever the multiplier is. It could be 3 to 5, which makes a lot of people attracted to day trading. That's because they don't want to have to deal with those excessive overnight fees, as well as those margin calls overnight, where they're saying your position went against you by this percentage, and you need to have this minimum amount of money inside of your account. When you look at your buying power, that is usually based off a multiplier. You might have registered for ×2 or ×4, sometimes even ×6. Depending on how much is used of that, you need to look at your ratio. Your ratio is how much your broker is willing to risk for you to have your position. And overnight, you only can use ×2 for a lot of that. So if you started a position that was ×4, you might have to partially fill that order to where it's only ×2 your cash position. That means if you had $100 in there and then you use $400, that's $300 that you don't have. And if you went overnight, you need to shave that down to a $200 position. That by itself, you took a loss. That's if the stock stayed at the same place. Now, there might be a certain ratio that you might be bought in. Now that you have to discuss with your broker. So if you have a margin call or your broker forces you out, when you are forced out of position, you are cut off for the rest of the day until you have some sort of risk management on the broker level. And I would know that personally. There was one time I traded APDN. Now APDN, it's something that we all traded for 3 days in a row. It had multiple layers of resistance, and there was rumors that there was some type of dilution coming in. I think it was an offering, and this offering was coming in soon. And so, since I was so confident that this was going to drop, and it was going to drop soon, as well as big, I started scaling in. I went in too early out of FOMO, and eventually I went into a position that was ×3. Instead of making my risk management down to 1/3 of what it normally should be, and then getting out and getting back in when I'm comfortable, I let the stock ride because I was so comfortable that the dilution was coming in soon. Well, I was 5 minutes early, and because of that, it went 20 cents higher than I thought it would on a $6, maybe even $7 stock, because I had a position size that was way too big. I was forced out of my position. The lesson is, if I just had a cash position, I wouldn't feel stressed at all. The broker wouldn't feel stressed at all. That was an easy 18 or 20K loss. And what makes it worse is when you want to go back in with your remaining money to get some of your money back, your account gets frozen because you got forced out. And the only way to turn it back on is to call your broker and set up some type of risk management or fill the margin call, which usually takes a minute because you have to wire the money in. Long story short, start small, don't get too greedy unless you are there to keep a tight risk. Now let's talk about the plays that happened this week. So we had HOLO. It's a microfloat. It's a Chinese stock, but on the surface, it's actually an American stock. Well, this one had sympathy plays like CCTG, HKIT, and TOP. Now, the reason TOP woke up is because everyone saw the price action as well as the squeezing price action that looks like HOLO. I'll walk you through it. HOLO, it was up 200, maybe 300% in the morning. That squeezed up to 6, went up to 9, and then it slow grinded all day and squeezed in the after hours up to 20. Then it gapped up overnight to 50. Now overall, everyone expected this to go to 80, but it didn't. Instead, it had a 50% morning dump. It then went right back to 40. At that point, everyone's done with it. Then we start looking at the sympathy plays like HKIT. Now, that happened on the 7th. On the 8th, people were looking for a continuation play on HOLO. And then that led to the sympathy plays on the 8th with CCTG and HKIT. IT. Now there was more money to be made on the sympathy plays because you could hold them through the rest of the day. You just had to get in at any point pretty much. There's a high chance if you chased on HOLO, you would have lost your money, especially if you held to the end of the day. Now on the last day, which was the 9th, that's where we woke up TOP. Now this one was a gap up short. There's a resistance. If anything, there's layers of resistance. And going into those layers, you got 10 million, 20 million. There was a lot of resistance that you can go into, but we treated it like a gap up short. You could treat it like a bound short too, but we prefer to stay fluid when it comes to these Chinese stocks because they can be really volatile, just like HOLO. And that's what happened this week. Shorts were destroyed on HOLO. And if they got on the sympathy play, they probably made some money. If they went on TOP, there was a small opportunity, and that was it. So one of the things you have to understand when it comes to your leverage multiplier that makes up your buying power is you have your initial cash in your account, and then there's a multiplier. Now this multiplier will give you your buying power. You have that entire buying power to use in your position, which means it can be a really good thing or it can be a really bad thing if you don't know what you're doing. But all right, guys, that's all I got for you today. If you like what you saw, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.